Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional league, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? It is the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. It's Friday, so you know what time it is. You know what that means. It's your boy. It's Ethan. I hope everybody is having a fine week, Hope everybody's staying safe. As you know, them COVID things are rising. Them COVID symptoms are coming out a lot more. People are getting sick. And, it's always best to stay safe. So do what you must to continue to keep your health in check. GSMC, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. And at the top of the pod, I wanted to ask a question that could be a little bit loaded depending on how you feel about it. So I wanted to talk about Jameis because I am assuming Jameis will be the starter. And name the starter probably at game time because Sean Payton isn't exactly the type to say, yeah, let's throw in who the starter is going to be to the Atlanta Falcons and give them a couple days of preparation. No, we're going to throw them a curveball. We're just going to hold. We're not going to throw a curveball. We're going to stand at the mound and just shake our head like 40 times between the next 3 days, and then boom, Taysom Hill is the starter. No, I still don't believe Taysom Hill is the starter. I think most people are assuming, like me, that Jameis Winston will be the presumed starter for the Saints for the next few weeks. If you don't know, it seems like 2 weeks is the minimum that Drew Brees will be out for, and I would assume, honestly, I'm thinking it'll probably be either 3 or 4, and it will all depend on how Jameis really plays in this debut. And the biggest thing here is that this is Jameis's, I guess, audition for potentially the best situation that he could be in before the year is up. So let me explain. Jameis Winston signed for $1 million to come basically learn under Drew Brees and under Sean Payton to get himself properly ready to go back on the market. And the problem with that is there was no preseason, there was no training camp, there was no preseason games in order to showcase to other teams what Jameis had, I guess, I don't want to say left in the tank, he's not old, but what Jameis was able to improve upon and if he's still starter quality in the league. And this is a guy coming off for 30 touchdowns, even though he had 30 interceptions. But as we all know, in the Bruce Arians system, you throw a lot of picks. Now, 30 picks is pretty excessive, but it is true. If you play under Bruce Arians, especially in your first year, you throw a lot of interceptions. That's just the tale of the tape. Peyton Manning, you see guys like Tom Brady, who's thrown 7 already. He had 8 all last year. That's just kind of some things that happen. But with that said, he threw a lot of interceptions. So that's why when people look at Jameis, we understand he has the arm talent. We understand that he is capable of making throws that Drew Brees and Taysom Hill cannot possibly dream of making right now in their careers. At the same time, we understand that his decision-making can be this decision-making is a little bit less than what would be desired from your starting quarterback at times, especially during his Buccaneers run. But things may change, right? Things may change. And that's what Saints fans are hoping. That's what I'm hoping for this run, that somehow Sean Payton and Drew Brees have mitigated some of these issues for Jameis. Maybe the LASIK surgery helped him too, to where now he'll be able to see things better, read coverages better. Who knows? And I don't think Jameis is going to be completely horrible. Jameis has about as much talent around him as he had last year on the offensive end, with probably a similar to / a little bit better offensive line play. Let's be real here. The biggest problem with Jameis going forward is if he does not feel comfortable in the pocket, he will make mistakes. And that's not specific to Jameis Winston. That is, in fact, a problem with a lot of quarterbacks. Quarterbacks need trust in the pocket or else things will go awry. And on last Sunday, we saw when Jameis came in and the interior of the offensive line was not able to basically protect Jameis well. They weren't able to protect Breeze that well because he got hit twice in the first half. It was just a weird game. A lot of things were going wrong. But interior pressure has been the Achilles heel of that Saints team for the better half of 2 years now. And it's no surprise that when that sort of thing happens, your quarterbacks get flustered. They can't make the right passes, make the right reads, and they just have to go down with the ship. And I think one of the interesting things is that instead of throwing it away, costing the game away, Jameis took a lot of sacks. He took 2 back-to-back sacks, in fact, in that game. And you can look at that and say, oh, man, Jameis isn't ready. Who would be ready if you just have to be thrown into a game that you didn't expect to play, expect to get in and play some extended amount of a second half? But regardless, he was not ready to play that game. And you can clearly see from after the first real drive where he threw some good passes. He slung one to Alvin Kamara, who it probably was Jameis' best pass that I've seen him do in a while. That just looked really good. A timing route, got it to the corner right on the dime, only to where Alvin Kamara could really get it, fitted it in a perfect window for him, and it was excellent. And then on one of the same drives, he just overthrew Michael Thomas in the end zone. I think coming from a fan perspective, it looked bad, but at the same time, he probably put it to where only Michael Thomas could get it, potentially, and then if he couldn't, it was just going to be incomplete. He did not want to throw a pick in the end zone. He didn't want to force it on the drive. It looked like Jameis understood the situation that he was in. Lean on your defense. Don't make mistakes. Eat clock. That's what that was. So, with that said, here we are. Full game week of prep for the Falcons. A notoriously bad defense this year. A defense that will give up some points. And quite frankly, if you can throw it down deep, they have a lot of guys who are still young at their positions in the secondary who are not the best in coverage right now. Going up a guy against Michael Thomas, who I know he was hurt. I know the numbers don't look right, but when you watch Michael Thomas play, it doesn't look like he is laboring out there, right? This isn't a guy clearly playing, he's not at 60% out there. I think he probably is closer to 80 to 85. And 85 of Michael Thomas is still a dangerous wide receiver. And let's not forget, because Jameis has an arm, and I mean an arm that can rival a lot of teams, like a lot of different quarterbacks on a lot of different teams. A lot of different players have been basically unlocked for better or worse. So Damian Harris is not on the team. But Devontae Harris is unlocked now. He can go about as deep as anybody else. That's the Saints' best deep threat. He can catch really well. It's kind of rare, which is weird to say. It's rare when a guy is that fast and has solid hands and has good moves. So I'm pretty sure him and Alvin Kamara have the same trainer at this point. He has really, really good balance when he runs with the football, especially on kick returns and stuff like that. You'll see that it's hard to take him down, or harder to take him down than what you may think. He has a good core center of gravity to himself. Regardless, he can catch the ball. Emmanuel Sanders can still run deep. He can catch the ball. Jared Cook, for all intents and purposes, has not played well in the last 2 games. The first of the last 2, he dropped a lot of touchdowns, or he dropped potential touchdowns, fumbled the ball twice. Not great. However, he can get down the field. That's not a problem. Jared Cook can get down the field. He can stretch a defense. 3 players right there that can stretch a defense. Then you have Michael Thomas, who can work anywhere inside the numbers and the outside. Then you have Alvin Kamara, who can do the same thing. And if Sean Payton still decides to use Taysom Hill in all of the Taysom Hill packages and bring him out as tight end or slot wide receiver or get him out of the flat in the running back position or in the position or whatever the case may be, the Saints have weapons. And Jameis can utilize them as best as he can be. And throwing it deep, don't forget about Callaway. Callaway's a stud too. And Callaway was more of a deep threat coming out of college. I learned that via Nick Underhill, Saints beat writer. Well, I don't want to say he used to be Saints beat writer. Now he runs New Orleans football, New Orleans Football, which is a great site if you're into Saints content. Subscribe. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to relate this back to fantasy. I promise. Stay with me. So here are some of the top 12, 14 quarterbacks in fantasy currently right now. Number 1 is Patrick Mahomes. Number 2 is Kyler Murray. Number 3, Russell Wilson. Number 4 is Justin Herbert. 5 is Lamar. Ben Roethlisberger is 6. Number 7 is Aaron Rodgers. Number 8 is Deshaun. Number 9 is Matt Ryan. Number 10 is Cam Newton. Number 11 is Tom Brady. Number 12 is Carson Wentz. 13 is Jameis Winston. And 14 is Matthew Stafford. This is for going into week 11, right? So I wanted to see, who would you rather have before Jameis? I'm going to put out some names. Tua Tagovailoa, would you rather have him than Jameis? I think it depends on your situation as a team. If you are a team in fantasy, and this is not talking about daily fantasy, of course. Daily fantasy is a different discussion. And season-long fantasy format, right? If you are a team that's already above 500, a couple wins above 500, mind you, and you don't want to risk potentially having a horrible quarterback performance, you go with Tua. You go with Tua, you go with Tom Brady, you go with Matt Ryan. You go with those guys because you know what the floor is going to be for the most part. You know what the floor is going to be. And everyone above, of course, you do the same, I believe. So, all the good quarterbacks, the Aaron Rodgers, the Ben Roethlisbergers, the Matt Ryans. Even though Matt Ryan is going up against a defense that's really been playing well. Here's the deal, right? Here is the deal. There's not really much else you would want over Jameis after that, though. You don't want Baker Mayfield over Jameis Winston. You don't want that. Jameis is a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's whole MO right now in Cleveland is to not mess up. Do not throw a pick. Do not put your team in a bad chance to lose the game. That's what he does. As ESPN goes off. Sorry about that. If you start Derek Carr over Jameis, you understand what Derek Carr is able to do. Projected points like 16. Serviceable. But I think Jameis can get you 16 too. Because of just all the sheer amount of passing that the Saints probably are able to do, I think Jameis will be able to pass for a few things, man. He'll be able to get Alvin Kamara on the flat routes, and that's something that Drew Brees lives off of already. So we know that. So he's going to have potentially Drew's floor, and he has the upside of being able to throw it deep to all these other weapons. You're not starting him over you're starting him over Kirk Cousins. That's a given, right? I would start him over Jared Goff, playing Tampa Bay. I would probably, it would be a toss-up between him and Teddy because just matchup-wise, Teddy's going up against Detroit. Detroit's defense is not great. I would start him over Matthew Stafford because Matthew Stafford hasn't played well in the past 2 games after coming back presumably from COVID. I would even start him, I definitely would start him over Drew Lock. Would I start him over Drake Luton? Against Pittsburgh, probably. But then again, Pittsburgh is one of the weirdest defensive teams in fantasy because the metrics make sense for why they're good. But they're giving up points to the Cowboys. They gave up points last week, too. I'm sorry, they didn't give up points last week. They gave up yardage and statistics to other, to T. Higgins and such. So T. Higgins had a good day, even though he played up against a tough defense. So for fantasy purposes, right, I'm still of the mindset you start your studs, unless it's real specific situations where, for sure you don't want to do that. Like, I would not start most times against the Ravens, even though, we saw the Patriots get some fluky stuff against them as far as that defense is concerned. So I wouldn't look at that too hard in the face. But, yeah, man, that's for sure. And I start him over Phillip Rivers, right? He goes up against Green Bay. And you can make the argument that Kirk Cousins should be started over Dallas. But, Dallas had a bye week, and before that, they were playing better, quote unquote. Better. No, I didn't say good, I said better. But we're going to take our first break, and then we're going to come back. And afterwards, we're going to continue on this Jameis conversation. Then we're going to talk about some injury news as well, some breaking news. NBA draft just happened, but we're talking NFL. GSMC. We'll be right back. Do you ever feel like you're always on? When you don't know when you need a moment to chill. These days everything is go, 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 and it's nothing but nonstop hustles all the time. So there's only one beer that makes me want to relax and chill out, and that's Coors Light. Let me tell you, Coors Light makes me relax all the time. When I'm watching the Saints stress me out all the time, the best thing on a Sunday is a Coors Light to calm me down, calms my nerves. It welcomes good comfort. It makes for a relaxing time. Mountain cold refreshment made to chill. So, Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit that reset button, reach for the beer that is made to chill. Get Coors Light in a new look delivered straight to your door at get.coorslight.com. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, GSMC, we're back. Fantasy discussions, fantasy teams, fantasy players, fantasy people. I wanted to quickly touch on Jameis in daily fantasy play, just in case you like to risk it all. Here's the deal. It would be a home run if you did it and it worked out. If Jameis went through, 5 touchdowns to maybe 2 picks. Let's say Jameis throws 2 picks, right? But he throws 5 touchdown passes. That's a pretty sizable thing. That is great. Now, granted, I don't know how I feel about that as a Saints fan. It made me nervous. But 5 touchdown passes, I think we would live with it. Regardless, if that's what you're betting on, you have merit. He did it last year. He has the arm. He has the system around him to still do it. It's not like he's, sitting in a talent wasteland like the Patriots or something like that. He could do it. But are you willing to bet the daily fantasy dollars to do it? I would not. I think there are a couple quarterbacks that you could probably look at and be like, okay, these guys may be the safer play. These guys might be the ones you want to start against whoever you choose to start against. So let's keep in mind, right? We have a Kyler Murray performance against Seattle coming up. Big game potential. Patrick Mahomes is going to go up against the Vegas Raiders again. Big game potential, right? Even at a certain point, you start to look at, okay, Jameis goes up against Atlanta, but who knows, right? You have Teddy Bridgewater versus Detroit, who Detroit gives up points in bunches. Kirk Cousins, who played up against a solid defense last week, put up 19 on Monday night. And, it's like the Vikings are playing better. They could have won 4 straight in a row if it weren't for the Seattle Seahawks debacle. They're playing better football. They're not as bad as they were in the beginning of the year, and they're going up against Dallas. There are some home run plays already there, and there's some safe ones, of course. But that's what you have, that's what you have right there. And if you're going for the home run ball and you want the most fun out of your Sunday, start Jameis. Right? But if you want a little bit of a safer play and you think that the dollar amount is worth it, then go with somebody else, because they probably give you a safer floor than what Jameis can offer, because we just haven't seen enough of Jameis in 2020 to understand what is he right now. Because it's not only the fact that is he better than what he was, because we know what he did last year. It's in fact that if it was last year a fluke in his own right when it came to the touchdowns. Is there a touchdown regression that's going to come here, or is it going to be? Is he not attuned with the system at hand? There's a lot of different metrics here and a lot of different things that factor in to what James was able to do last year. He's not with the same coach. He's not with pass happy Bruce Arians anymore. He's not with air raid Bruce Arians. He's with Sean Payton. Now, Sean Payton can get a little bit pass happy. Depends on the game script. But Sean Payton has shown over the years that he's willing to run the ball when it situates the team best. And this would not surprise me if Sean Payton reverts back to that ideology again, where he wants to lean on Alvin, he wants to leave on Latavius to eat up a lot of clock, not put Jameis in, precarious situations where he's throwing the ball, 10 to 14 times in a drive. He doesn't want that. However, I do think he's going to take his shots because he has the opportunity now. And I know Sean Payton likes to show things off. So it would be the time. This would be the time where Sean Payton is like, I'm about to kill him with this. You know what I mean? I'm about to kill him with this one. They're not even ready for it. They're not even ready. The Jay-Z, yeah. Turn my headphones up. Yeah. I don't know why that just came in my head, but that's exactly, that's where we're at right now. It's Friday. Anyway, I think Jameis is going to come out and play with an Empire state of mind and do well. I hope, for my sake, for my mental health, I need Jameis to do well, because the Saints are basically putting everything on the line now. And this is why you acquire a guy like Jameis to be your backup, because he's a high-end backup that can have a really high ceiling and a serviceable floor enough to where you can still win some games as long as you keep him honest, keep him good. And he's probably the most talented guy you can have that's not in the top 10 of the NFL draft next year, right? He still has number 1 overall pick talent. The talent is still there. The arm talent is still there. It was just always decision-making, which goes way back to when the draft happened, right? Just hasn't really improved all the way. And I think that being under Peyton will maybe change that. So moving on to injuries and other big topics of the NFL season for week 11. So let's go ahead and do that for sure. So as we know, injuries can happen at any moment in time, and we're already aware of the Drew Brees and the Christian McCaffreys, and there's updates across everywhere else in the National Football League as well. So we might as well get into it all the way through, shall we? So, as is always a mainstay in the NFL, there's already wrecked several teams during the season, and Cowboys are one of them for fantasy purposes. So, which teams are healthy in Week 11, we will find out, and which are banged up, of course, we will know. So, Cardinals at the Seahawks. The Seahawks are, in fact, -3 They have Justin Murray, the offensive lineman, who is a hand. Corey Peters, who has a knee issue. Jordan Phillips with a hamstring. They're all out. Devondre Campbell with a calf. Daryl Daniels with an ankle. Charles Washington with a groin. And Max Williams with an ankle are all questionable. On the Seahawks side, Shaquille Griffin has a hamstring and Quentin Dunbar has a knee. Ethan Pokic has concussion. Jordan Simmons with a calf are all out. While Travis Homer, the running back with a wrist, knee, thumb trifecta right there is doubtful. Chris Carson with a foot is questionable. Kyler Fuller with an ankle issue, and Tyler Lockett with a knee issue is questionable as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if they all play. So, with Phillips out, Angelo Blackson, who is a 6-year veteran with 1 sack and 12 tackles this season, is slated to fill in the right defensive end slot. The only healthy tight end currently on the Cardinals roster is Dan Arnold, who caught a career-high 4 passes for 34 yards in Arizona's 32-30 victory over Buffalo. And just to reiterate that, just to know where the tight end wasteland is still living large, Dan Arnold had a career-high 4 passes for 34 yards was caught. I'm sorry. He had 4 catches for 34 yards. Career high. Boom. So despite missing most of the week's practices, Seahawks coach Pete Carroll expressed optimism when asked if Carson's possible status for Thursday night. And the Seahawks will have running back Carlos Hyde, who missed past 3 games with injury. And Carroll has said that he does not think that there is any doubt that Lockett will play after having an encouraging practice on Wednesday. So, as far as the other Wednesday practice reports going on here, so for the Eagles, linebacker Sean Bradley had an illness, and safety Rudy Ford had the hamstring. Were the only players that missed Wednesday's practice due to injury, and injury-wise, Cleveland is in decent shape, but right tackle Jack Conklin and kicker Cody Parkey and the long snapper Charlie Hewlett are all landed on the COVID reserve Wednesday, throwing their status into question. And star pass rusher Myles Garrett also missed Wednesday with an illness as well. So that's definitely something that a lot of people should keep in mind. Also, side note, Michael Thomas had 18 targets in 2 games. Let's relax. I'm sorry, it was not in 2 games. Technically, you have to count week 1 too, but let's relax. It'll be fine. Other side note, Seahawks are the only team in the NFL that has not put somebody on the COVID injury reserve list. Interesting. Let's keep moving forward. So for Steelers, who are a -10 favorite at the Jaguars. So the Steelers' Wednesday practice did not include Ben Roethlisberger as per usual and Juju Smith as per usual. Cornerback Mike Hilton was a full participant after missing Pittsburgh's last 4 games. Also practicing in full was rookie running back Anthony McFarland, who missed Sunday's win over the Bengals with an illness. Laviska Shenault and tight end James O'Shaughnessy were the only Jaguars who missed Wednesday's practice due to injury. Jacksonville has 10 players practiced in limited capacity, which include Gardner Minshew, running back James Robinson, rookie cornerback C.J. Henderson, and defensive end Josh Allen. Despite his progress, Minshew will probably not face the Steelers on Sunday. Then we have the Titans at the Ravens. So offensive tackle Orlando Brown was limited on Wednesday. Defensive end Calais Campbell is out, did not practice. Cornerback Jimmy Smith and defensive end Brandon Williams did not practice. Among the Titans, 9 players that did not practice on Wednesday include pass rusher Jadeveon Clowney, receiver Adam Humphries, and cornerback Adoree Jackson. Receiver Corey Davis, who played last week despite the recent death of his older brother, missed practice Wednesday for, of course, personal reasons. Patriots, who are a -2 favorite against the Texans. So the Patriots did not have a single player that missed practice on Wednesday. They did have 13 players of limited capacity that included cornerback Stephon Gilmore, running back Damon Harris. While Harris has proven to be an effective starter, his touches may be impacted this week if the Patriots activate Sony Michel, who hasn't played since week 3. And the Texans were without running back Duke Johnson due to illness. Kenny Stills with a back issue, and offensive tackle Laramie Tunzel on Wednesday, and the Texans cannot afford to lose Johnson as the team plays David Johnson on injury reserve over the weekend. Bengals at Washington, where Washington is a -1 favorite for the Bengals. Running back Joe Mixon and defensive end Geno Atkins. Personal reasons for him, who both missed Sunday's loss, did not practice on Wednesday. Cornerback Mackenzie Alexander with a concussion was limited Wednesday after he was unable to finish Cincinnati's Week 10 loss to the Steelers. Washington did not have several starters practice Wednesday. That includes receiver Dontrell Inman, left tackle Jerron Christian, and free safety Deshazier Everett. And each player was inactive during last Sunday's loss to Detroit as well. Lions at Panthers, which there's no line as far as I know. So Detroit didn't have a wide receiver, Damian Ndola. His Wednesday's practice, but he didn't welcome back fellow pass catcher Kenny Golladay, who was on track to return this week. Matthew Stafford suffered a partial ligament tear in Week 10, but is fully expected to play. And Carolina won't have star running back Christian McCaffrey for a second straight week, with Mike Davis already declared the starter. Quarterback Teddy Bridgewater, meanwhile, was limited participant and remains in a question mark for Sunday's game, with Will Grier and P.J. Walker tabbed as emergency fill-ins. And Falcons at the Saints. So, of course, Atlanta may not have wide receiver Calvin Ridley against New Orleans, as the pass catcher remained in limited practice Wednesday. And the Saints will likely turn to Jameis Winston as the starter, with Drew Brees reportedly missing at least 2 weeks as he recovers. And utility man Taysom Hill is officially also in the mix to take over, but Winston was the first man off the bench in Week 10, of course. Then Jets at Chargers, where the Chargers are a -8.5 favorite. Brashad Perriman was limited participant for the Jets on Wednesday, leaving his status up in the air against Los Angeles. Left tackle Mekhi Becton is expected to suit up despite a Week 10 scare against the Patriots. And Tyrod Taylor was the only Charger player who missed Wednesday's practice with ribs. Defensive end Joey Bosa with a concussion, and offensive tackle Brian Beluga were all full participants. So the Dolphins are a -3.5 favorite against the Broncos, and after missing out on a chance to take over for Myles Gaskin, Matt Breida returned to practice Wednesday and could be in line to start at running back for Miami, especially with Jordan Howard now off the bench, off the depth chart as well. Denver likely won't know the status of quarterback Drew Lock until later this week, when the team plans to ramp up the participation in practice. Number 2 quarterback Brett Ripien would be in line to start in Drew Lock's absence. The Vikings are a -7 favorite at home against the Cowboys, and rookie guard Irza Cleveland was the only Vikings player who missed Wednesday's practice due to injury. Tight end Irv Smith, defensive tackle Hercules Mataafa with an ankle, and Garrett Bradbury and cornerback Cameron Dazzler were limited. And the Cowboys, fresh off a Week 10 bye, only had 2 players miss practice due to injury, as Tyler Biadasz and defensive end Randy Gregory. Guard Zach Martin was limited, while quarterback Andy Dalton and running back Ezekiel Elliott were full participants. Then we have the Packers, who receivers Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, Darius Shepard, and E. St. Brown. Don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm not going to butcher it. We're all limited. Adams is hoping to play on Sunday, but his progress should continue to be monitored over the next several days. The Packers will continue to evaluate the progress for Lazard, who was activated on injury reserve on Tuesday. And tight end Jake Doyle with a concussion remains sidelined for the Colts and likely to rely on Trey Burton and Mo Alley Cox once again. Let's take a quick break and we'll continue on the injuries, and then we'll move on to some other topics.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, so I wanted to go ahead and keep going here at the injury reserve stuff because it's important, and we really only have one more left. But Packers at Colts, so I'm sorry, not Packers at Colts. Chiefs -7 at the Raiders. So Bo Pete Kiez, who's an illness, and defensive end Taco Charlton were the only Kansas City players that did not practice Wednesday. Offensive lineman Mike Remmers was limited, while defensive tackle Chris Jones and receiver Sammy Watkins were all full participants. The Raiders placed more than half of their starting defense on the team's reserve/COVID list on Wednesday after defensive end Cleveland Farrell tested positive for the virus as it relates to Wednesday's practice. Running back Jalen Richard and was the only Raiders player that did not practice. Safety Eric Harris, defensive end Mossy Hurst with ankle, fullback Alec Ingold with ribs, and offensive tackle Colton Miller were all limited. So that's your injury report for right now, and that's what we've been seeing. So I wanted to move into another discussion, which would be about offenses that we're trying to avoid right now for the remainder of the fantasy season. Daily fantasy, seasonal fantasy, avoiding these offenses. So I have 3 on my list. One of them played, and it wasn't great. They've been playing pretty poorly offensively all season long, and it's been one of the more interesting talking points because they house and have starting the current reigning MVP of the NFL, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. I want no part of the Baltimore Ravens. There's no redeeming factor. At this point, it's questionable to start Lamar on given Sundays just because of the fact that it's just not there. He had his best passing day of the year last week, and it still wasn't that great. Now, fantasy purposes wise, he still has the rushing floor. We understand that, but we have to understand why last year was an anomaly. This team was getting 8-yard, 6-yard runs. Probably should say 6-yard, 8-yard runs. That would make more sense. 6-yard, 8-yard runs, right? A pop. Doing stuff like read option up the middle, up the gut. Like, it was a offense that we've never really seen work this great before. They were literally just running rampant, to say the least. They were excellent at every stage of running the football last year. And this year, it's just a little bit of people figuring them out, right? And them not really having the downfield threat weapons that they thought that they would have. As far as progression, their best receiver outside of Mark Andrews is Willie Snead. Like, let's be real. As much as we like the idea of Hollywood Brown being good, he just is not there yet as a wide receiver. And he's more of just a deep threat. In my opinion, he's just Deontay Harris with a bigger profile, I suppose, because he's not, the Saints are weird. They're kind of like a small market team with but a really dedicated fan. It's hard to say NFL teams are small market, but they are. Some teams are small markets, other teams aren't. That's why we see Giants games all the time. That is why we see Eagles games all the time. That's why we see LA teams like the Rams get thrown on TV. Dallas, big market team. All the 9 yards. We understand what big market, small markets mean. So, moving forward, let's continue this on. The Baltimore offense is stagnant and it's suffocating your fantasy team. Don't start Hollywood Brown. He's done nothing for you. All the idea of the metrics of him getting separation and stuff doesn't matter. It's 10 weeks into the season. They are who they are right now. There's no fixing this. There's no fixing this problem in fantasy perspective. Put him down. There's other wide receivers available. If you're playing PPR, there are vastly more wide receivers available for you than Hollywood Brown. Praying for the home run. It's not going to come. Stop praying for it. It's done. It's finished. Let's reevaluate some things. Let's look at what we have on our rosters. Hollywood Brown is not going to get you anywhere. Mark Andrews, you have to keep him just because tight end is so bad. Let's remind ourselves, tight end is so bad where we just read that someone's best day this year or for his whole career was a 4-catch, 32-yard day. And, you know, tight end is just not as, it's weird to say this. Tight end is kind of becoming like running backs to me, where you can find quality tight ends everywhere when it pertains to football. The actual sport that we love to watch, right? We definitely all love to watch football, right? We just don't care. We don't all just care about fantasy football. We started watching this sport because of the fact that football is cool. Football is fun. I like football. And then you got into fantasy. And now most of us still like football, but it's a lot more stressful than it probably ever needed to be for us personally. So let's keep going here, right? Mark Andrews is a really good tight end. You can argue Mark Andrews is a top 3 tight end in the NFL, all injuries removed. He definitely was last year. People predicted Mark Andrews would have a breakout season this year. That has not happened for multiple reasons. Their pass offense is pretty basic, right? When they play bad teams, they don't pass because they don't need to. They just run the ball, eat clock. Their defense destroys people, and they win. When they play good teams with good offenses, and they have to throw the ball because they're down 10 plus, it gets problematic because receivers drop passes. Like, there's a lot of drop balls in that game, just like very similar to the Titans game in the playoffs, where there's just a lot of drop balls, a lot of drop passes that stunted drives for Baltimore. And thus, when Lamar has to become a really good passer, you can see that he's just not there yet. And I guess the best way to describe Lamar Jackson is what I believe, was it Trey Wingo? I think that might be the wrong name. Somebody on the Ryan Russillo show, a guest, he perfectly stated how Lamar is. When the Ravens are not down, they can just run the ball and they have full control of what's going on the field. Lamar Jackson is a superstar. A superstar. Bona fide stud. When they are not in full control and the other team gets to dictate the pace, and let's say there's a lead behind that as well, Lamar Jackson is kind of average as a passer in the NFL at this point. It's fair to say, and that is just the case. Lamar Jackson isn't like this. He has an arm, but he's always had issues throwing outside the numbers. That was what he was reportedly scouted as an issue, and that kind of hasn't mitigated itself as of yet in the NFL, and that's still an issue. So when you basically take away like those ends of the field and everything is bottlenose in the middle of the field, you get issues like that, right? So that can hurt your offense as much as the fact that, let's keep in mind for fantasy purposes, let's be real. Mark Ingram coming back hurts us. If you own Gus Edwards, you can't play him right now. If you own J.K. Dobbins, you can't play him right now, even though it seems like J.K. is the starter. The starter, I think. Right? You think he's the starter? Because
he looks better than everybody else in that backfield outside of Lamar when it comes to running the ball. But at the same time, it's like they switch 3 different guys and then Lamar's running 2. You can't have it all. The only person that you can trust is Lamar because he has the ball every single time. You don't know what these guys are doing. Mark Ingram coming back. He hasn't looked good all year, really. And that's the Achilles heel right now for that Ravens offense. I want no parts of it unless it is Lamar Jackson, and you kind of have no choice but to have Mark Andrews at this point because who else are you going to pick up? Who else do you have in your tight end position that you can just put in? You don't have Darren Waller. You don't have Travis Kelce. You're done. You're finished. You don't have Hawkinson. You're finished. Just suffer like the rest of us and move on. And if you're doing daily fantasy, just don't draft them. Don't pick them up. Don't put the money on them. Next, we're going to move a little bit quicker here. Next, Indianapolis. So, tight end purgatory here. Indianapolis. Guys are hurt. I believe Mo Alley Cox is back. I think he might play, but in limited fashion. I know Jake Doyle is not here anymore as far as playing. So Trey Burton and Mo Alley Cox, that's your guys. Then running back wise, man, what did I say? I know there are some guys out here, even on this show, this network, who were so ready after Marlon Mack had the season-ending injury to go ahead and crown the off-season rookie darling, Jonathan Taylor, as a guy who is going to be a league winner. What a disappointment that has been for those people. I tried to tell you. I tried to warn you. I tried to tell you that it's not all P's and Q's with that guy. The coming out, he doesn't really know where. He has no awareness, man. Like they're starting Naheem Hines over him. Who Naheem Hines looks great, mind you. He looks great. So if you have Naheem Hines, please, just probably should start him. If he burns you, fine. But it's better than wishing Jonathan Taylor every week to do something. And as you can see, it just keeps going. Like running backs are supposed to trend upward in these sort of situations, and it's just not happening. It's not happening. It's going backwards, and that sucks. Sucks for all you guys that really wanted this to work out. I know in years prior, I would have probably been like, yeah, I want this to work out. But I was telling folks, Marlon Mack was the starter. He was going to be the presumed starter, and I think he would have been really good. And all this means to me was this makes sense because it doesn't look like Jonathan Taylor really is ready for the NFL workload as much as people wanted it to become that way. And after that first 2 week stretch, it has been mitigating results and small results ever since. And that is just the fact. They're leading on Jordan Wilkins and Naheem Hines. Like that should signal some things to you. From the receivers end, you may want to stay away too, even though Michael Pittman has shown some flashes of things. That might be something in the making. But I would still stash him personally. I wouldn't trust the start. But that's happening right now. And in a world where we see guys like Phillip Rivers going up against Green Bay, I would not start him. But T.Y. is borderline droppable. And by borderline, I mean he should have already been dropped, and then he came back. I still would drop him. I would not. There's other players that you can find value in. Pick up Michael Pittman if you want Indianapolis players. Go ahead. Do it that way. But Indianapolis is an offense I'm kind of staying away from. Phillip Rivers is too wishy-washy. I'm not a fan. And I don't like to be on the roller coaster rides on too many teams. And last team is Chicago because it's just not great. Chicago is a horrible offensive situation right now. Offensive line is in shambles. Jimmy Graham is the only touchdown threat right now. Allen Robinson is literally wasting his time there, unfortunately. And, just imagine if he was able to get on a good team. That's just kind of where we're at. Darnell Mooney was fun for a few weeks, and then he did nothing. And that's not great. Basically, every offensive potential outcome for the Bears have been a disappointment thus far this year. David Montgomery has been a disappointment. right? Allen Robinson, for all intents and purposes, has been solid for you, but you really wanted more out of him, especially for where you probably drafted him. Yeah, that's just it. You want no parts of Chicago. Put him away. Put him back in the toy chest. That's where they have to go. And that's just where I see that going for the rest of the season. Those three teams, unless something drastically changes amongst them, I would leave them be. So we're going to go ahead and get into our final break of the podcast. And we are going to move into $2 extravaganza coming up. GSMC will be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, so we're back. GSMC, final segment of the day, and we're doing our $2 MKF extravaganza here. And what do you know? The first thing that pulls up is my failed bet attempt. I tried to go 5 for 5. I tried to do it all, and I missed out on one key detail. Overthinking this Justin Jefferson thing against a bad Bears team. I won't make the mistake again. You won't get me a third time, but I took an over on Kirk Cousins for passing more than 229.5 passing yards. He had almost 300 passing yards. I said Nick Foles will not throw for 269, and he threw for 106. I said Allen Robinson would get more than 5.5 receptions, which he got 6. I said Dalvin Cook would rush for more than 85.5 yards, which he had 96. My one failure, my one true screw-up was underestimating how much Kirk Cousins would actually throw for more than. Because if I go more on Kirk Cousins, that probably means I should go more on one of his top receiving threats out there, right? I didn't. I did not think that Justin Jefferson would get more than 60 receiving yards, right? Because if you look at his season stats, it's literally boom or bust. It could go flip-flop either way. It's just, unfortunately, this week, it was boom. It was boom. And that stinks. But, yeah, he burned me. It was okay. That was actually a $5 buy-in. 4 out of 5. Well, so close, right? Yet no cigar. We understand the sentiment. $2 extravaganza, $2 picks, whatever you want to call it. We have $28 in our account, and we are not going to spend it all right here, right now. But we are going to spend some of it, and that is what makes everything all great and dandy. So we have the Thursday night game where I see passing yards coming in bunches. I'm sorry, the lines are really high. The lines are really high here. But I think I might have to go the over. So they have Seattle, of course, Cardinals. Quarterback numbers, they have Russell Wilson at 317.5 passing yards, and they have Kyler Murray at 291.5. I think I might have to go over on both. And here's why. Russell Wilson for sure is going to have to throw the ball probably 40 times to try and win the game. That's a given. I'm not going to overthink that. The Seahawks defense is horrible. I'm not going to overthink this. Kyler Murray is going to throw the ball a lot. They're hot right now. They're peaking at the right time. They're going to throw the ball. Don't overthink this. I'm putting in the $2 bet right there, right now. And that's just what it is. We're going to do that one. Boom. That's probably safe bet number one. Safe bet number one, we're going to do that one. Let's continue on here. Let's go Titans at the Ravens. Now, this will be fun because Ryan Tannehill has a 229.5 line. 229.5. Cam Newton only threw for 100-some yards last week, but their offensive talent is not great. Tennessee has better offensive talent, but we understand that they like to run the ball a lot. That's how they get their stuff going. Lamar's line is 220.5, but Titans' defense is horrible. I'm going more on Lamar. This is the last time, though. If he burns me, it's 1 for 1 right now. He burned me once. It went well for me another. I'm going to see what the difference is here. And I have to believe that Ryan Tannehill can get more than 229.5. I think 230 for a starting quarterback is just too easy to really get to, because if you get blown out or you're losing, you have to throw the ball. And 230 can be accomplished in a 4-quarter game if you're not. Like 245, 260, that can be a little bit tough if you're just running the ball. 230 is doable. We're going to put some money on that, and we're going to buy that one in. That's a solid one right there. That's a solid one. I'm going to do that one for sure. So, let's keep going. We're probably going to mix some things up here. Atlanta at the Saints. There is a 297.5 passing yard performance out of Matt Ryan that they're speculating to happen. We don't know if Calvin Ridley is going to play. I think this line is bad. Going less on that. Jameis Winston has a 250.5 performance line. I think Jameis can throw for more than that. And I think he will. I'm putting more on that. And that is where I see that going. And I smell victory in the air on that one for the Saints. At home, a lot of things make sense. I don't see why you wouldn't do that. Then we can go to Steelers, Jaguars. We really want to start cleaning up. Here's how we start cleaning up here. So let's start moving towards a little bit more of the 3-for-3s, because that's what makes things more exciting and easier to talk about. Quarterbacks, although you can lose just as well on them, it's not like you're going to lose all the time. So they have a line where Ben Roethlisberger has 283.5, Jake Luton with 212.5, and Juju Smith-Schuster with 5.5 receptions. It's very possible that these things can happen, but Steelers like to spread the ball around. And if we look at Juju Smith, right? Let's look him up. Juju Smith-Schuster. Let's look at his statistics on the year, right? Let's look at that. Game stats for the past 3 games. 9 receptions, 6 receptions, 7 receptions. He had 7 against Baltimore, 6 against Dallas, 9 against Indianapolis. He's been trending upwards. He has been trending upwards. He has 54 catches on the year. He's been fine. And he's gotten a lot of looks so far. I think it's safe to say that he'll get 6. If we look at Ben Roethlisberger, this is how I do these things. It's real simple stuff. You look at trends and you look at what things are going. Ben Roethlisberger has thrown for 306 against Dallas. He threw for 333 against Cincinnati. I think that the Jaguars have probably as equal of bad defenses as those two. However, that's still a pretty big line to get to. 283 is not getting 300 yards this year is not easy. You need a lot of things to go your way, and you need to be sharp as a quarterback to do it. And if you're beating a team badly, you're not going to throw for 300 plus yards. That's just, unless you are continually passing in the second half. it doesn't really start to get poured on. You kind of need a lot of better things to happen. So I'm thinking that he'll get it, but it'll be a stretch. I think it'll be a stretch. They say Jake Luton at 212.5. I don't bet the unders on any of those situations because 212 is just too simple, man. You can do it. It can be done. It can be done. Even though Lamar burned me on 212, the Ravens are, like I said, move off of the Ravens. Unless it's Lamar, you leave it alone. Repeat with me now. Unless it's Lamar, you leave it alone. All right, so let's do two more. Let's do two more. Lions versus the Panthers. Two quarterbacks who presumably are coming into play with injuries. And, if Teddy does not play, we'll get the money back. So it's not too bad. Let's do fantasy points. That's what we play here, right? Fantasy points. Let's do that. We have a 4 out of 5. We get 4 out of 5 right. It's a 3.5 fantasy bonus. Teddy Bridgewater, 17.5 fantasy points. Matthew Stafford, 17.5. Mike Davis with 17.5. Robbie Anderson with 15.5. And Kenny Galladay with 14.5. Not gonna lie. There's a lot that I feel less than I do more. I don't think Mike Davis is getting 17.5 off the top of my head. But it's not like Detroit's run defense is spectacular. But 17.5 is a lot of points. It's a lot of points. Now, for their fantasy statistics, they're scoring. So, rushing touchdowns are 6 fantasy points, of course. They play 1 PPR, so 1 point per reception. So, when we think about this now, he would need to get a touchdown and, say he was at the 1 yard line, 7 points. So really, if he gets a touchdown and maybe 30 yards, that bet is probably cooked, at least to some degree. But we only have to get one wrong and we still win. So that's the big thing. I don't think Robbie Anderson is going to get 15.5. I think 14.5 is probably the teaser. And I would rather get that one wrong than not. And I think Kenny Galladay, although coming back from the injury, it's a hip. It can be twitchy. It can be weird. I think I'm going to go less on Mike Davis. And I think that Matthew Stafford is going to have to throw some touchdowns. So I'm going to go more because I think he can get to 18. And I think Teddy can also go to 18 as well. So I'm going to put $2 bet on that. See what happens. We're going to see what happens there. All right, and then we're going to do one more. And I want to do a new game because I don't want to bet on all the same games. Houston at the Patriots, or Patriots at Houston. Let's keep our things right here. They have Cam at 210.5. Now, Cam did not throw for over 200 yards. I don't believe in a lot of games. So I don't think Cam Newton has had the best season passing yards wise at all. That's an understatement. If you look at Cam Newton's statistics, it's not great. So last couple games, of course, he played the Jets. He threw for 274. Played the Ravens 118. Played the Bills 174. So decent defenses are not allowing Cam to do great things. That is the case right now. That is the case. He has only gotten basically since the Seattle game, only one other game that he's thrown for over 200 yards. Not 250, not 200. Really, over 180. Only 2 games. That was the Jets and that was Seattle. Every other game has been 170 or less. Last week being his second lowest, except for when he played against San Francisco. So, we have to go less here. That's the key. We have to go less. It's only right. Deshaun is 270.5. New England's defense, they're getting healthier and they play a lot better. But you can argue that as long as Deshaun Watson has his weapons out there, he can throw for 270. He had his worst game last week, honestly, as a player this year, but I think he'll bounce back. So we'll do more on Deshaun Watson, and that's the play. That's the play right there. So we're going to do all of that. So those are our bets, and that's how we're going to mark it up. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 upcoming bets, and you know how we run things here, man. We'll probably do halftime bets too. But yeah, man, GSMC, that'll be the podcast for this week. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the pod. You'll hear me Tuesday to give a recap on all the pain that I suffered because I probably got some of these wrong. And that's okay. That's what makes it fun. GSMC, I'll see you all later.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.